Lord Jean Saville walked the battlements of the fortress of Bastogne impatiently. 2 days ago his scouts reported the approach of the enemy forces. He immediately dispatched a messenger to the capital, but had yet to hear anything from King Alphonius. Now the enemy was close enough to the fortress for him to begin to identify the forces assaulting him. It was a significant force comprised of Imperial and Ogre forces. That was not a good sign. While he would match the will of Bretonnia to any army in open battle, he had to admit the Imperials possessed the advantage if they were to lay siege to the fortress. Lord Saville hoped that the king would have advice on how to proceed. Almost as if summoned by thought, the messenger on Pegasus landed in the courtyard. He rushed to Lord Saville and presented a scroll bearing the royal signet. Lord Saville opened it and read the simple message. Lord Saville, do not fear the Imperial rabble. I have secured aid for you, and they will be arriving directly through the northern passes. It is imperative that you strike against your enemies, and weaken them so they will be utterly crushed once your relief forces arrive. Ride out in glory, Lord Saville, your king, Alphonius I. Lord Saville did not know what allies would be coming through the northern passes, but he had sworn himself and his men to King Alphonius, and would do as commanded, with no questions. Men, prepare to ride out, he called. We shall show these dogs the valor of Bretonnia, for king and country. Alright, so here's our battlefield. This is taking place on the outskirts of the village that surrounds the Fortress Bastogne. And pretty much very little terrain, a little bit of water on our side, and the whole city of, or the village of order, settlement of order set up on the Bretonnia side, and not much else. So nothing is really all that special in terms of terrain. Mainly it's just the fact that the buildings are where they are that are going to come into effect. So let's go ahead and get started with deployment. So on the far left for Bretonnia, we have a unit of 5 mounted yeomen. In the back there, we have a unit of Pegasus Knights. You can see a trebuchet barely there in the corner next to them, and up front a unit of what looks to be 10 peasant archers with the stakes in front of them. Then we've got another unit of mounted yeomen. Behind them, another 10-man archer block. Behind them is a 50-man peasant block that has a level 1 damsel to beasts in there and a walking paladin. Next to that, you see another unit of 10-man of archers with stakes, and behind that you can barely see the second trebuchet that's hanging out there. And then over here we've got a big unit of Knights of the Realm with his lord who has heroic killing blow in there, and 2 paladins making a paladin wall. Then we've got a next unit of his Knights Errant with a BSB and his level 4 to lore of Heavens. Oh, and the first Knight unit has a level 2 lore of Beasts in there as well. And then you can see hiding behind the building, right there, is another unit of Knights of the Realm. I think there's another 10 or 12 in there with no characters. So actually it's got to be like 12 or 13 because it's a big unit and there's no characters in there. Unfortunately, deployment kind of sucked for Bretonnia here because he has so many troops, because he has 3,000 points and then each of us, Imperial and Ogre, have 1,500. So he was kind of trapped in there. I probably would have deployed these guys on the other side. So over here for us, we have 2 great cannons hiding behind the water, then a unit of pistoliers, then a unit of 30 halberdiers with his BSB captain who has no gear on him, Archlector Heinrich von Grunberg who has no gear on him, and a level 4 to Lore of Light, Felix Weishoff, who again has no gear. We went very simple on characters for the Empire side. Next to the halberdiers you see is a unit of 10-man Inner Circle Knights, and the Celestial Hurricanum behind that. Then for the Ogre side, I've got a unit of 7 Iron Guts with my Tyrant, who's got the Greedy Fist, Fencer's Blades, Glittering Scales Bit. BSB Gat the Old, who has the Dragon Maw banner, and a level 2 Firebelly Ungoro Flametongue, who has a Dispel Scroll. Then there's a 2-man unit of very defensively built Mournfang Cab with Bellower and Standard, then 1 Cat. Then I've got a Stonehorn, and then on the other side of the Stonehorn is the Hellblaster Volley Gun for the Empire. And there's pretty significant vanguarding going on. Our Bretonnian opponent is getting as much of his chaff up front to delay and redirect us as he can, so definitely a very proactive use of chaff. This is one of the games, I think, that shows how well Skip has advanced as a player. His play was tight. His deployment may be a little shaky, but his play was tight pretty much through the whole game. And because this is evil Bretonnia, and they are having their ward save provided by the demons, we do not make this army roll or have to pray to go first. So we roll, and Bretonnia gets the first turn. So he gets his guys just up in everybody's face. He wants to keep us packed in so he can get where he needs to get the good charges. So kudos on him for that. Then on this side, he moves up his errants so that he's got a decent charge on my Stonehorn, but I've got to roll like 12 to get him. So not bad there. I think the big worry is he's going to charge over that wall, and knowing Skip's propensity for failing dangerous terrain tests, he's going to lose more dudes from the wall than I'll be able to kill. And so magic, we hold him down, we go to shooting, and he lands a trebuchet directly on this cannon, but again his peasants have been loading them with pillows and only inflicts a single wound on the cannon. And then just showing how his the other trebuchet tried to hit the same cannon and went off. But then showing how his peasants show up for work. The 5 mounted yeomen here open fire on my Iron Gut units and kill one of the Iron Guts out of it. Then the peasants in the back open up on the Pistoliers, kill 3 out of the 5 of them, and panic them. I think the halberdier or the yeomen up front take shot at the halberdiers maybe and kill 1 or 2. So we go into Empire and Ogre turn 1. My Iron Guts, just to get the blockers out of there, charge the peasant yeomen. They flee, end up hitting the corner of the building, and dangerous terrain kills 1 of them. I then redirect for a decently large charge or long charge against the Pegasus Knights. He chooses to flee with them as well. They end up parked right behind the peasants, and nobody panics. So obviously that's going to turn into a failed charge for me. Then the Empire Halberdiers charge the other unit of Fast Cav who choose to flee, and they run like crazy. And I want to say the Knights charge them too to make it so that the Halberdiers aren't going to get there, with the whole idea that we don't want our lines really getting out of whack. And so by the end of movement, this is what everything looks like. We're really presenting kind of a pretty solid line here in the center. I'm throwing up a cat to kind of redirect to prevent those knight units from coming in on the flank of my Iron Guts, and everything else I'm kind of holding back. I'm hoping that Hellblaster is going to go off and thin down some knight units before I have to commit anything on this side of the board. So our shooting and magic completely failed, so we go into Bretonnia turn 2, and the Knights Errant here attempt to charge the Stonehorn and fail, so they end up right at the edge of the wall there. And then here in the center, everything that we had managed to panic rallied, so we're still facing a pretty solid Bretonnian front line here in the middle. And then on the far right, during normal movement, that third lance comes out and joins the others. Again, I think the big problem here is that the Bretonnian player is really packed in tight. He doesn't have enough room to get multiple lances in on anything, and I think he's going to be tripping over himself. If he had put one of the lances on the other side of the board, I think he would be in a much, much better position. So, I'm trying to remember. Oh, yeah. So during Magic, we hold him off on everything, burn all our dice, and then he reveals that one of his characters in the Knight Errant bus has the Ruby Ring of Ruin, and he fireballs the Sabertusk to death. So during shooting, Trebuchet lands a rock direct hit on the Hellblaster volley gun and only inflicts one wound. So he's done that twice now. Okay, and I actually missed our entire turn of movement, but as you can see, the ogres there charged into his mounted yeoman. They decided to hold. That's the only charge that got done. So during shooting, one of our cannons, we don't get magic off. During shooting, one of the cannons does 2 wounds to this trebuchet. And then the other one tries to go through some of the knights here and only hits the first bus and does 2 wounds to it. So cannons definitely, I don't think artillery is doing much on either side of the board this game. So it's going to come down to somebody getting into combat here. Then here in combat, my Iron Guts very easily vaporize the mounted yeoman and overrun into the archers that were hiding behind them. So we go into Bretonnia turn 3. The Knight Errants finally make their charge into the Stonehorn. I think they lose one or two to dangerous terrain. It wasn't very much. I'm really just hoping they rubber lance and I can do a ridiculous amount of wounds back, because that Stonehorn is way out of leadership range, so the static combat res is going to be a big problem for him. Then over here you see the Pegasus Knights and a unit of archers charge into the Knights. He had to charge the archers basically to free up space. The mounted yeoman on that side charged the Pistoliers that had come up to do some shooting last turn and to no great effect. The archers there in the middle tried to charge the halberdiers again to get them out of the way so that he can start bringing that big peasant brick into effect, but they failed, so they only stagger forward a couple of inches. And then over here he moves that other knight unit up to the wall, and his first knight unit that had taken some wounds turns to look at the ogres. That scares me, so my ultimate plan here is once I kill these archers on this turn, I'm going to reform and go into the building on my next turn, and then I can pop out pretty much whatever direction I need and avoid potentially nasty charges from the Bretonnians. So magic is no big deal, shooting is no real big deal. We go into combat. The Stonehorn actually does pretty well against the Knights. They don't do many wounds to it, but it was just a game of static combat res, and I didn't have it. Not being able to do the impact hits or the stomps or the thunder stomp with the Stonehorn just wasn't good for me. So I think I had to roll a 3 with no reroll, failed it, and got run down. So over here, the peasant yeoman and the pistoliers are going back and forth at each other. All that's left is a champion from the pistoliers and a single peasant yeoman left. Then in that center fight, the Pegasus Knights just have rubber lance syndrome. They can't do much of anything. And with the peasant archers there, they gave just enough combat res for the Inner Circle Knights to win. Everything breaks. The Circle Knights choose to pursue the Pegasus Knights and catch them. And then over here, needless to say, those archers just get absolutely mulched by the ogres. I think he has, they even have Ice Shard Blizzard off on me. That's what he did during Magic Phase this turn. But they end up, is that them fleeing? That might be them fleeing there. But either case, I restrain. I reform after this picture is taken and point myself at the building so I can go in there on my next turn, as I described a little earlier. So over here, the knights charge the peasants that were fleeing from them. They run off the board, I think. I don't see them. And then they redirect into the trebuchet. Then everything else is as you see it here. I move the Mournfang up so that none of the lances can see him. The ogres, or the Iron Guts there, are actually in the building. They're just hanging out there because they don't balance on that pointed roof. And that's pretty much it for movement on our side. Our magic doesn't really accomplish anything again, but then the Hellblaster decides to show what it's made of, turns around, and completely guts this unit. The only thing left there is his BSB and his level 4 Prophetess. And then during combat, obviously the Inner Circle Knights kill the Trebuchet and turn around to face the back of the giant peasant block here. Oh, and this reminds me, we did get one spell off, just for shits and giggles. The Empire player casts Bretonnia's Time Warp on his one Pistolier who kills the Yeoman pretty casually with that. So during the peasants or the Bretonnians' turn, the peasant brick attempts to charge the halberdiers because he could see barely, but ends up failing it. So turns and is like this, and this is just an absolutely bad place to be. Not that if he hadn't charged, he would have been in any better situation, but there's a lot of pain ready to come down on those peasants right there, and there's probably not a whole lot they can do about it. Over here, the other knight unit charges into the Hellblaster volley gun to go ahead and kill that. I think he loses one knight to dangerous terrain when he goes over the wall. Then during remaining moves, all he really does is spin his two characters around, and his other knight unit at the top, you can see their feet slide back just a little bit. I'm not entirely sure why. And you can see those 4 peasants are still fleeing. They're not quite off the end of the board yet. So I know this looks like the same picture, but it's not. The red dye on the roof of the building shows that during his magic phase, he got off a Comet of Cassandor right on the building. Shooting is still garbage, so we go into close combat, and obviously the knight unit destroys the Hellblaster. We don't even do the combat, we just pick up the Hellblaster. Then it goes into our turn, and everything brings the hammer down on these peasants. Mournfang, halberdiers, and knights all go slamming into that peasant brick, and it's going to be a bad day for them. I also brought the ogres out the front of the building. During magic, we get the speed of light off on everything in a 12-inch bubble. So my ogres and everything in that big battle all have weapon skill 10, initiative 10. So it's a bad day. Then we go into shooting, and one of the cannons shoots down here, catches his caster in the head, and kills her. So no more level 4 Heaven's Magic. Also, the Comet of Cassandora went off and did a few wounds, but nothing of any great substance. So we go into combat, and obviously with weapon skill 10, initiative 10, and the +1 to hit from the Hurricanum here, these units just eat those peasants alive, end up breaking them. I think there's 10 left when they break. It really wasn't that many, and they get run down, and everything is kind of where you see it here. So we go into Bretonnia turn, and the knight unit here charges the Iron Guts. He really needs a big win here, but keep in mind these Iron Guts are weapon skill 10, initiative 10, with 3 characters in it that I'm going to step up. So, yeah, it's going to be a messy, messy fight. Now, he does have his Heroic Killing Blow Lord and 2 characters here as well, so we'll have to see how that goes. Over here, he just has his Battle Standard Bearer join this unit so that we can't snipe him out with a cannonball. And then during combat, the pain. I step up with all 3 characters. He challenges with his Heroic Killing Blow Lord, and my Tyrant accepts. Tok'ran steps forward, and with weapon skill 10, initiative 10, 6 attacks, just absolutely slaughters the Heroic Killing Blow Lord before he gets to go, and then the rest of the unit just eats those knights. Literally the only thing left is his damsel there, and then she rolls double 1s to stay. So she is awesome and badass. And being that this is going into top of turn 6 and the Bretonnia player has no legal charges he can make, this is where he chooses to surrender. The force of the ogre's attack shattered the knight's armor, and then their bodies. Looking around, Tok'ran Facecrusher, tyrant of the Whitetooth clan, noticed that of all the horsemen arrayed before him, only a single woman remained alive, one of their so-called damsels. This did not seem overly unusual to the ogre chief until the laughter began. The woman threw back her head, and the sounds that poured from her throat were not of any human voice. As she looked back at Tokron, her face began to melt like wax and take on a pinkish hue. "You may have claimed victory here, Ogre," the now revealed Herald of Tzeentch said, "but our lord knows your plans, and you will never reclaim the throne of Bretonnia." With this proclamation, the creature exploded in pink and blue flames, burning several of the Iron Guts who had gotten too close. With the demon gone, Tokron looked around. His Imperial allies were safe, and what remained of the Bretonnian force had fled once their demonic master was revealed. Tokron cared not for where they went, as long as they stayed out of his way. The tyrant called to his Mournfang cavalry. "Take a message to Cartasia. The way to the capital is clear. It's time to end this." So, turned into a big victory for the Empire and the Ogre Kingdoms. The forces of evil Bretonnia have been broken at their fortress at Baston, and now we prepare for the final battle to take out the Tzeentch-controlled king and reclaim Bretonnia. So this game was a lot of fun. It was definitely just knock down, drag them out, and it very much felt like we were all sort of participating. It didn't really feel like a blowout until that last spell went off and everything in the attacking force had weapon skill 10, initiative 10, which is messy. But all in all, it was very fun. I think the big mistake that the Bretonnian player made was packing his knights too close in the corner. If he had spread one of those knights out to the other side and threatened us on both flanks, it would have been more difficult to deal with. But all in all, it was a lot of fun. I hope you guys enjoyed it. As always, if you have any questions or comments, please leave them below, and I will get to them as soon as I can. Other than that, please stay tuned for the final battle of this narrative. Will the forces of the rebellion under Cartasia be able to free the throne of Bretonnia? You'll just have to stay tuned to find out. So, hopefully you guys enjoyed this. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next time.